Well, start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Muhammad Firdaus, and I am conducting this interview as a part of my final project for the British Society and Literature course. And today, I have the pleasure of speaking with our esteemed guest, Bea. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. And could you please introduce yourself and tell me a bit about yourself, about your background? So,
Hi, my name is actually it's pronounced B, just like a B in English. And I'm a student. I was born in London. I grew up in London, and I'm a student in London. I live in pretty near central North London in Islington. Um, and I study English literature, actually, funnily enough. Did you hear that?
uh, okay, my camera is um, I'm sorry for the I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let's begin by talking about daily life in the UK. Can you describe a typical day and for you and how it reflects the daily life of people in your community?
Okay, well, my day depends on whether it's during the university term or not. If it is, then I will usually wake up, make breakfast, sometimes wake up pretty late, and I'll start reading for my courses as soon as possible. And then often I'll have a few lectures and a few seminars that day, in which case I'll be walking into London, into Strand, where my university is. And um, yeah, and then if I'm not work doing university work, then I'm basically free, apart from I have a part-time job as well, which I do on the weekends. And I do office work from my home. How does this reflect people in my community? Well, it reflects students. I mean, students tend to have pretty a lot of free time in the UK, which is why they do a lot of extracurricular activities and hobbies and stuff. Um, People who are working full time will have less free time than I do in some ways. Um, and yeah, I think the UK tends to have a pretty good work-life balance. I mean, we tend to have more sick days and holidays, paid leave than, for instance, America does, but we probably have a bit less than some other countries in Europe. So obviously, it depends on your job and it depends on your situation. But yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
Do you think these generations differ from those older generations in the UK?
Say that again.
Should I
Sorry,
repeat?
I didn't hear what you said. Yeah,
Do you
Ulangi.
think that the years of younger generations differ from those of older generations in UK?
Yes, I think my experience is quite different. I think that um, younger generations in the UK feel um, a bit more unsure of their place in society. I mean, um, I mean, Well, yeah, I mean, young people, we like to go out. We like to go out to clubs and bars and do some kind of activities that adults, older people don't tend to do. Um, I think the social dynamics have changed over the generations. Um, People perhaps less friendly with strangers, or they might have less community nowadays than they did in previous generations. Um, there's been lots of talk politically about um, austerity, which is like government cutting funding for public services, meaning there's less community in for people now, or less places where there can be community, and everything's very expensive. Um, but so that means that you think young people hold on to the connections that they have very hard.
Yeah, I have to look like I want to talk about leisure activities that people do. Are there any traditional pastimes that are particularly popular or some kind of usual event or remote events that all the people from UK do? And you have to say, and you are from London, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we like football a lot in the UK, and currently the European Championships are happening. So the English national team is playing. Um, and so watching or playing football will be quite a big pastime. That's probably the most popular sport in the world. So it's a big thing. And when you walk around, you'll see pubs decked out with decorations with the English flag to support, and then people will go out uh, and go to pubs and drink and party together when England win, watch the game. Um, what other activities? I mean, I think we watch a lot of TV. Everyone watches a lot of TV. Um, that's quite a big part of British life. Personally, I like going to restaurants and cooking and um, exercising. Um, Traditional pastimes, I think, particularly popular. Yeah, I think having people over, seeing friends, having parties, having dinner parties is a big part.
And yeah, I really appreciate it. And could you share some cultural tips and don'ts to someone visiting UK should be aware of?
Um, yes. Well, people in the UK tend to be quite private, so you don't necessarily reveal information about yourself very quickly or ask too directly for other people's information. There's a stereotype that people, Americans, sometimes when they're coming over here, will sometimes just be like, "Hi, my name's John. How are you?" And giving your name when you first meet someone, or like immediately when you first meet someone, is quite unusual in the UK because we have this kind of culture of privacy and sort of leaving people to their own devices, like that, leaving people on their own most of the time. Um, in the UK, you're more likely to exchange your names with someone like quite a while after you meet, like a few hours maybe after you meet, or it depends on it can happen that late or it can happen a bit earlier. But cultural do's and don'ts. I think London is particularly standoffish because everyone's busy and has got their own life going on. But that doesn't mean that we're necessarily rude. Um, it just means that we are kind of private and in our own world. Um, yeah, cultural do's and don'ts. I'm not sure that one of the main things that people get annoyed about in London is people walking too slowly or blocking the escalators on the tube. If you're going on the metro on the tube, you need to stand on the right and walk on the left to make sure you're not blocking anyone. Um, yeah, watch out for pickpockets. Yeah.
How about I would to shift our focus to culture, the arts, and uh, we work in our cultural community and in the UK. And can you give an example of a significant cultural?
Um, yeah, I think they're very important. Um, a big example would be Glastonbury Festival. That is one of the biggest music festivals. It's the biggest music festival in the UK and probably one of the biggest in the world. That people compare it to Coachella in America, but it's quite different. Um, so that's, a music festival. Everyone goes to camp in a field, and they set up a bunch of stages. And Glastonbury always gets the biggest artists in the world to come and perform. And a lot of times, a big a performance of Glastonbury will have some sort of cultural resonance. Like the rapper Stormzy did a very big and um talked like widely talked about performance at Glastonbury a few years ago. Um, yeah.
Right? And sorry, it's the arts things like in your area in yes. And are there any notable artists or cultural institutions that play a significant role?
Um, yes, London is very big for art. We have a lot of galleries, and a lot of them are free to enter, which is very good. Um, I'd say one of the most significant ones is called the Tate Modern. That is on the south bank of the River Thames, so that's right in the middle. And it used to be a power station, a factory, bankside power station. So it's this very sheer brickwork factory building, but they've turned it into a gallery, and it's the most visited gallery in the UK, and I think it's one of the most visited in the world. It's because it's free, and there's always lots to see and lots going on. They have very big exhibitions. Um, I think that definitely that plays a significant role. Lots of people like to go there, go on dates there, meet people there, take tourists there. Um, there's lots of other galleries. I mean, I like a lot of different galleries. Um, and other cultural institutions. There's quite a lot in that area on the south bank of the Thames. The National Theatre is there too, which is is probably the biggest theatre. And there's a Royal Festival Hall, which hosts a lot of cultural events of different kinds. So yeah.
Okay, and have you noticed any significant changes in cultural practice or artist expressions in recent years?
Well, I think there's a decent amount of pessimism in the national mood at the moment or recently. There's a movement on that some people have discussed called metamodernism, which is taking the cynical aspects of postmodernism and combining them of postmodernism and combining them with a kind of reclaimed sincerity of modernism and sort of vacillating between them. I think that's quite a prominent mode of cultural activity at the moment. Um, yeah, but it's hard to comment on changes that have only happening very recently.
Thank you for that insight. And now let's talk about the education system in the UK. Can you describe the education system in the UK? And what are some of its strengths and weakness from your perspective?
Okay, so The UK education system. Um, I think we have pretty good schools for the most part. I think that there's big weakness in that state schools, which are funded by the government and are free to everyone, are underfunded at the moment, and private schools, which only rich people can access, can pay for, are um, quite prominent, and people who go to private schools tend to have better outcomes. And then university is very different. On the one hand, the universities of the UK are a big strength in terms of um, the UK status as a world power. Um, Universities like Oxford and Cambridge are famous throughout the world, and lots of people come here to do research, to do scientific research. Um, and but the trouble with that is that basically the government tripled tuition fees um, in 2011, I think. And so since then, it's cost quite a lot of money for students in the UK to go to university. And you need loans, which aren't as bad as the loans in the US, but they are quite bad. And um, basically, what a lot of people complain about in terms of the UK universities right now is marketization, um, which is where universities start acting a bit more like businesses, and they get a lot of international students because they have to pay even more than the local students, and basically aren't treating their staff very kindly, and are sort of moving to using metrics and standardized testing and all these kind of things where the focus is more on making money and having uh, these sort of markers of success rather than actually doing deep research.
Very well. And now, what kind of opportunities is for like lifelong learning and adult education in
Well, there are night schools, there are part-time universities. A big one in England is sorry, in London is Birkbeck University. That's part-time, so a lot of people go to that to get a degree or some kind of qualification while they're still working. There's also the Open University. The Open University was founded in the 90s and has since become very popular. And they do all their teaching online, or almost all their teaching online. So lots of people go to there to get more qualifications later on in their life. There are apprenticeships as well as degrees. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of language classes as well. A lot of people are improving their English or improving other languages, trying to learn other languages. Um, um, yeah.
and how do you think the education system impacts society and culture in
Well, that's a big question. I think it's changed a lot. I think uh, recently the assumption has become that most people go to university and that a lot of jobs require you to have a university degree, which is very different than how it used to be. Um, I think that changes everything. Universities tend to be centers for activism and left-wing political ideas, which I think is probably a good thing. And um, the students currently, university students are involved in a lot of, for instance, protesting around Palestine that is affecting the broader culture. Um, but yeah, the inequalities and the inaccessibility in the education system, I think, disadvantages people from poorer backgrounds, and I think that makes the UK less egalitarian.
this has been very important. Before we wrap up, is there anything else for you to think is important, about Britain, British society, culture, and our education that we haven't covered?
Um, I think the main thing about Britain, or one of the main things about Britain, is that it is used to be the biggest empire in the world and isn't anymore. And I think a lot of contemporary politics are about people struggling to grapple with that fact. And a lot of British people want to believe that us as a country is still important on the world stage and that we have this special relationship with America, for instance, who is obviously the global hegemon at the moment. But obviously, that's not really true. We're just another European country, basically. And we're not that big or prosperous a country anymore. And it's important to keep that in mind when you're looking at the UK as a nation.
Right, and then I think that's all from me. And thank you so much for sharing your insights with me. I really appreciate your time and contribution to my research. And
Thanks. I hope the connection
thank
wasn't
you.
too bad.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Uh, yeah, I think that's all for the interview. And again, I want to say thank you to you for volunteering to be us and my interviewee. And that's it. See you in another opportunity, maybe. Thank you, yeah.
See ya.
You may leave the room.
It was nice to meet you. Bye.
Uh, okay, I think that is for my interview. I am sorry if there are any inconvenience or wrong words that have been said. And that's it. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.